I'm back to talk about a few things concerning hyperinflation and wealth preservation. I know with everything going on, that stimulus package we just had in the spring here, and the $2.2 trillion that was passed. I know that some of this is going to be repeat, but I think it's very important. So that $2.2 trillion that was passed equates to $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. It's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child. Of that, majority of it, most of it went to banks and politicians, those that are in the club, those that are deserving from what they deem as deserving. And then they got the idea that we should give some crumbs of this as we pass this to keep some people quiet and have less resistance. So people who qualified got $1,200, and if their children qualified, got $500. That's nothing. That's that low percentage compared to the $8,000 for every man, woman, and child. That was $2.2 trillion. When that was passed, it was said also that at the same time that this could turn out to be a larger stimulus package, a larger stimulus bill, whether that is in another round or two other rounds, however that takes form. But it was said that this $2.2 trillion bill could turn out to be a $6.4 trillion package. So, put that in perspective. That's huge. I know I've said this before, but how much is a trillion? A trillion is just thrown around like nothing. A trillion can't even comprehend how much that is, how much money that is, currency that is, fiat currency. It's unfathomable. Well, anyways, so I've said this before, but it's a big number, so I just want to say it again. 1 trillion seconds. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,709 years ago. It's 1 trillion seconds ago. If you account for leap years, there'd be 31,688 years ago. 1 trillion seconds, 31,688 years ago, including leap years. That's huge. A trillion seconds ago. And they're thrown around, this number trillion like nothing. $2.2 trillion stimulus package. As a country, we're 26 trillion in debt. They're gonna plan on spending 1 trillion every year, at least, to keep this economy at float, keep everything running that they deemed should be running, operational. Any of their pet projects they have, of their testing on things and that kind of stuff, and anything that they feel you deem important, at least just enough to keep you guys content, quiet, and no resistance, or little resistance at that. So with that being said, the money, the purchasing power is just being eroded. It's just going away as we talk, as we know it. I'm going to have a chart I'm going to show you. Well, actually, I'll tell you this, just for an example, just a little one. Back when Germany was going through this years ago, in 1918, one loaf of bread cost 1 Deutschmark. Okay, 1918, one loaf of bread, 1 Deutschmark. That was November 1918. You go to November of 1922, the same loaf of bread was 163 Deutschmarks. That's November of 1918 to November of 1922. A huge jump, 1 mark to 163 marks for the same loaf of bread. And so if you go from November of 1922 to September of 1923, so not even a full year, that loaf of bread went from 163 marks to 1.5 million marks. So that's not even a year. So that was September of 1923. And then you just go to November of 1923, that same year, a couple months later, that same loaf of bread would cost 200 billion marks. So in a span of, what is that, 4 years, that loaf of bread went from 1 mark to 200 billion marks it would cost to get that same loaf of bread. That's hyperinflation. It starts pretty much how we are now, by the printing of money, the making of digits. This thing they call quantitative easing, which is basically, I believe, counterfeiting. It's just making digits out of thin air, printing the stuff out of thin air. It's counterfeiting. I mean, there's no better way to put it. But as long as they're doing it, it's legal. There's nothing that can be done about it. It's really not legal, but they're the ones that say if it's legal or not, so our hands are tied. So this is how it starts. So with that being said, I'm going to show just the purchasing power of the US dollar, where it was at and where it is today. So $1 bill could buy something in the 1900s, 1913, at the induction of the Federal Reserve, and what it can buy today with purchasing power. So I'm going to show this chart. Hopefully you can read this and see it all. As you can see here, that's the strength that the dollar had to the end here, 2019, is like 2% purchasing power of what it had once had. So we are on a solid gold standard here. Then there was World War I, that kind of stuff that went through here, and then they got us off of that main, original gold standard, and then we went to this Bretton Woods kind of agreement here. So we're not the same gold standard as we were here, but a fraction of it. So I believe it was like 40% backed by gold, the US dollar was, under this agreement. And then you can see as the stuff dropped to there, I mean, it wasn't severe. I mean, it looks severe, but not compared to where we are now. Dropped, and then you get here, this little area here, 1971. This is when Richard Nixon took us off of this Bretton Woods agreement. So the dollar was no longer backed by gold. It just became fiat currency. That's all it was. It's fiat currency. Then you get to this area right here. It's backed by nothing. It's been backed by nothing since we were taken off this little bit of gold standard that we had, the Bretton Woods Agreement. And now we are at 2% purchasing power as we once were, compared to what we once were. So with that being said, I know I did a video here of comparison of how much gold it would cost to purchase a car back in 1930 or 1940 compared to today. Would be the same amount of ounces of gold it would take to buy a brand new Chevy car as it does today. A brand new Chevy car costs the same amount of ounces of gold as it would have cost in the 1930s. It's the same amount of gold. Does it cost the same amount of US dollars, fiat currency? Absolutely not. It's so much higher. And why is that? Gold has not gone up in value at all. It looks like that, and people say that. People say prices rise in the stores and that kind of stuff. That's really not what's happening. The value of the dollar is losing purchasing power. That's what has happened. Because there's so much more out there, so much more being created, so much more being counterfeited, I call it, that less can be purchased with it. So it takes more to buy whatever you're looking to buy, whether it's a service, a vehicle, land, a car, whatever. But so if you think about it, back early 1900s, a loaf of bread didn't cost $1 or $2 like it does today. It was pennies. That's just a small example. Why is that? because the purchasing power of the US dollar went down. It would cost the same amount in gold back then as it does today for anything and everything, basically. I'm going to show this chart here, and hopefully I can show it better than I was showing the other one. So this just shows a bunch of fiat currencies, compared to gold. So gold has a bar on top running at 100%, so that's if you do it from the standard of gold. Everything has dropped severely compared to gold, it's purchasing power, relative to gold. The US dollar has dropped, the mark has dropped, the European currency has dropped, the yen has dropped. All these different fiat currencies, paper currencies now, have dropped in value compared to gold. Gold hasn't gone up. These currencies have lost purchasing power, same as the US dollar. With this bill that was passed, the stimulus package that was passed a few months ago, or a little while ago, earlier this year I should say, to the next one they're going to do it. They're already talking about, they've been talking about, and now they're talking about it more. It's going to happen. They're going to do something. And what is that they do? Well, they're going to pass another bill, stimulus package, whatever you want to call it. But with that being said, the government has no money. The government has nothing. They have no money. All they have is the power to print and counterfeit and create out of thin air. And what does that do? Well, that takes away the purchasing power from the stuff you and I hold. If we hold any sort of fiat currencies in our bank, in our wallet, at our house, wherever we have it, that, because there's so much more out there, the purchasing power of it is going down. Right off the bat, as soon as it's printed or created, it's got the same amount because it hasn't been around, it hasn't been flowing through, it hasn't been used. So it's brand new, so it has that same purchasing power right then. So if the banks get it, politicians, those that are in the club get it, they can spend and buy assets with that right away for the highest purchasing power that it currently has. But as it goes through society and trickles down, if you want to call it that, and it gets to us, inflation is here. By the time it hits us, that is what brings a loaf of bread from $2 to $20, from $2 to $200. Do I know what's going to happen? No, I don't. But I definitely would bet on it, and I feel it's right around the corner because they're not doing anything to stop it. They're just doing stuff to speed it up. They're pouring gasoline on this fire, and there's no looking back. Who's going to suffer? Well, you and I. Who's going to suffer more is people who don't prepare, at least a little bit. Just be aware. Start buying assets. Don't buy that coffee. Don't buy that, that soda. Don't buy that fast food meal. Go home and eat a sandwich. Take that money. Save it up. By the end of the week, you have enough to buy 1 or 2 ounces of silver, maybe even more. If you can, buy gold also. Silver's cheaper. It's easier to get in. Gold's a higher price, so it's a little tougher to start with. So I would at least start with silver. It holds wealth and purchasing power. This, just like gold does, it's a little sketchier. It goes up and down more. It's not as solid as gold, but it's way better than holding these fiat currency paper bills that we have. So think about that. I know there's some cool things out there to get children involved with saving gold, purchasing gold, like I've shown before, with characters, with superheroes, with Disney stuff, even with wildlife, animals, that kind of stuff. So there's cool stuff to get children involved and interested, at least starting to think this way and starting to do it. As I say now, silver's on clearance. It's the cheapest it's been for a long time, and that's why I've been mainly focusing on silver myself and my family. So I would I mean, I would highly think about that. And if you got the means, definitely, you know, get some gold too, if you can. I mean, that's at least what I would do. So I just want you to think about this. I know they're talking about this other stimulus bill package, whatever. They're talking about other things as far as how are we going to get crumbs to the people to keep them from resisting this thing that we're doing to take the wealth out of your hands and mine and my children's and my children's children's and my children's grandchildren, because the government has no money. They have nothing. All they have is what they're going to take from you and I, our labor. They're going to take our money, our currency, by whether you call it tax, I call that theft, or inflation, which is a hidden tax. Hyperinflation, well, that's even better for them, because then it doesn't stick down to your 2 to 5%. That's, you know, overnight, it's huge, just like the example of the bread I said. You know, how a difference of 2 months, it went from 1.5 million for a loaf of bread to 200 billion for a loaf of bread. Who loses out on that? You and I. Who benefits from that is the ones in charge. So just think about that. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant, protect your health, and protect your wealth.